Okay, welcome back, everyone. As we are into round two on our Motzei Shabbos, and I think it's already time to be a mensch and welcome in everybody as we welcome in Irving Fishbaum and Michal and Saba and Dr. Black and Yaakov Warman and Ruvain Shannon and Menachem Umansky, A.B. Spry, Yitzi Fuchs, Nachman Chapler, Rabbi Kranz, Ben Zion Cohn, Shelley Zeitlin, Yisrael Fisher, Dr. Guy, Yitzi Muller, Eddie Chazan, Mo Kushner, Michal Avram, Stephen Holtzman, Richard Rosenzweig, Naftali Jablin, Danny Vogel, Chaim Braun, Ilya Shutman, Moshe Lehman, Abe Arbach, David Helfgott. I don't know, somebody is not muted there.
He's not muted. I know that check it out.
Okay. So now, Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak Amar Rav, Kol hanechel k'moishu chai, a very important law in Bishul Akin, whatever could be eaten while it is raw, ein by mishum bishulei avdei kechavim. So therefore, if you're going to have cooked carrots, and of course this is talking about where there's no worry about blia, no worry about forbidden absorption, noisim tam l'shvach, noisim tam l'fgam is mutter, so there's no problem of bishul akam. Besura masnachi, that's the way that they taught it in Surah, but Pumpadisa masnachi, in Pumpadisa they taught Amrav Shmuel by Yitzchak Amarav, Kol she'enoi nechal al shulchan menachim l'lafris b'yasapas. There's no Issa Bishul Akam on something that is not served on the royal table to accompany bread. Then, if it's not that choshev, that ein boy mishum bishulei avdei kechavim. There's no trouble about Bishul Akam. Says Gemara my now, what's the difference between the two? Ika benayu dagim ketanim, small fish, va'arde, mushrooms, v'daisa, and porridge. Now, even though these are things that are not eaten raw, this is a species of mushrooms that were not eaten raw, but since they were not served al shulchan malachim, so then there would be no problem of bishul akam. Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav, dagim ketanim meluchim, small salted fish, ein ba mishum bishulei avdei kechavim, because it's already able to be eaten raw because of its salted situation. Amar Rav Yosef says, Im tzalon oived kechavim, if a guy roasted them, since anyway it was ready to be eaten raw the way it was, it's Saimech aleim Yisrael aleim mishum erev tavshilin. The chiddush is that even though the Jew did not roast it, did not cook it, he could use it as erev tavshilin. V'iyav dinu evi kechavim kasa daharsana. But if the guy took fish fat and made out of it the dish known as fried fish, now there the flour was not right to be eaten raw, and therefore that's aser. Says Gemara Pshita, that's obvious. Says Gemara Mao the same harsana iker. I might think that the fish fat is iker, and since that's edible raw, it's not a problem. Kamashman kimcha iker, the flour in it is the main ingredient, and since that's not ready to be eaten raw, that would be a problem of bishul akam. Amar Ebrayna Amar Rav, oived kechavim shehitzes as a arba agam. This is an interesting situation. He lit a fire in a marsh to clear the marsh. Kol hachagavim sheba agam asurim. All the grasshoppers in the marsh are asur. So the question is why? Hechidami. If it's because once they're burnt, you can't determine which one is a kosher grasshopper and which one is a not kosher grasshopper, so then the halacha would be the same thing if a yid lit the agam. It must be mishum bishulei kechavim. Says the Gemara, but wait a second. Is that a problem of bishul akam when the guy didn't light the fire to roast the grasshoppers, he lit the fire to clear the marsh. Says the Gemara, Ki I gavna mi aser, v'amar Rav Chanan bar Abi, amar Rab Das, amar Rab Yochanan, hayovi kechavim de chorich reisha, a guy who singed the head of an animal in order to remove the hair, shari l'meichel minei afilu mereish unya, you could eat the tip of the ear of the animal, which is made ready with the roasting. Alma, since labure sar kamachavin, since he had a mind to remove the hair, therefore the fact that it made it ready to be eaten, since that wasn't what the guy did it for, it's not considered bishul akam. Hachanami here also says the Gemara, legiluyei agma kamachavin. He's doing it to clear the marsh. If he's doing it to clear the marsh, it shouldn't be aser as bishul akam. So my new son Simcha pointed out to me that where do we find a difference of what the guy had in mind? What's the difference of what the guy had in mind? It's still bishul akam. And the answer over here is that over here the problem is al chasnos. The problem is al assimilation. And therefore, if the guy didn't have in mind for you, it's a step removed from being together, and therefore it's permitted. Says the Gemara, you know what? The reason why, if you lit a fire in the agam, you can't eat the grasshoppers, is they're not recognizable anymore, and you don't know which is the species that's star and which is the species that's tummy. You asked a good question, so then it's even if a yid did it. But it happened to be that in this case, the guy did it. And the same halacha would be if a yid did it. And Maisa happened with a guy. Gufa, as we move along on this wonderful Matzah Shabbos, together with so many wonderful people, I should tell you that I am gunning for a chak tomorrow night. I don't know if it will happen, but I am gunning to do a chak tomorrow night, so stay tuned for that after the daf. Also, as Yisrael Fisher has pointed out, we will have to start getting ahead sometime this week. I have to bear that in mind, because we don't want to have to do 3 blot on Sunday night. That wouldn't be very easy. 3 blot on Sunday night. Although, Eddie Chazan says, what's the difference? I'm traveling anyway. But not everybody is Eddie Chazan, Says the Gemara, Gufa. Amar Rav Chanan bar Rav Ami, Amar Rabbi Pedas, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Hay oivei kechavim de chorich reisha, a guy that singes the hair on the head of an animal, shari lemeichel minei afilu mereish unya. You could eat even the tips of the ear of the animal, since he didn't do it to cook the animal. Amar Ravina, so the Gemara says, so therefore we can infer, Helkach, Hai Oivikachavim, the Shada Sich Salasuna. He put a peg into the oven in order to harden it. Vikava by Yisrael Kara Me Kara. It happened to be that a Yid put a pumpkin in the oven from before, in order, a gourd in the oven before, Shapardami. It's okay, even though the guy turned on the fire. Says, well, pshita, that's obvious. He didn't do it to cook it. Says Gemara, I might think, maybe we say that putting in the peg is considered like he's cooking the peg, and therefore he did have in mind to cook it. Kamash malan, that's not called cooking. L'sharurei mana kamachavin. He had in mind only to strengthen the peg, therefore he didn't do it for cooking purposes, and therefore the pumpkin is permitted. If a yid put meat on coals, and and a guy came and turned it over. You know, you put something in the grill, and a guy came and turned over the steak, mutter. So the Gemara says, hey, Chagami, what's the case? If he didn't turn it around, it would still cook. So then he didn't do anything. Pshita. If he didn't turn it around, it wouldn't finish cooking. Then why is it mutter? Am I mutter? That's bishul akum. Says the Gemara, if he didn't turn it around, it would cook in 2 hours. And now that he turned it around, it cooks in 1 hour. I might think, the fact that it cooks faster is something. Kamashman, that it's not. Says the Gemara, but wait a second. Whatever is a third cook, like the bandit Ben Dusai, who was always in a rush and eats his food as a third cook, that doesn't involve bishul akum. But the mashmois is if it's less than a third cook, then yesh by mishum bishul ayv. Says the Gemara, no, there it's talking about if you have a food on the grill that's less than a third cook, and you took it off the grill and put it in a basket, and the guy takes it out of the basket and puts it on the grill, that's no good. It was in a basket. If it wasn't a third cook, then it's bishul akum. Here, it was on the grill and it would have cooked, and therefore, if he turns it over, even though he causes it to cook faster, that's not considered bishul akum. Tanya nami achi. We learned likewise. Maniach Yisrael basar al gabi kechavim. If a yid put meat on coals, or and a guy comes and turns it around, until the yid comes from the shul or from the study hall, there's no problem. Similarly, she could put a pot on the double stove, and the misharses could come and stir the pot. She could come, and stirs the pot until she comes home from the bathhouse or from shul. Now, says the Gemara, what happens if the guy put it on the fire, and then the yid turned it over? So the guy started the cooking. Now, it's a kal v'chaymer. It's a kal v'chaymer. Gamru b'yad oivik kechav mutter. If the guy completes it, it's mutter. Gamru b'yad Yisrael like kal shchein. And Takan the Gemara says, either way, in the beginning, in the middle, in the end, if a yid has a hand in it, it's permitted. Ibanami, Amar Rabba Babachana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. V'imrei law, and others say, Amar Rabba Babachana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. If the guy put it on v'afach Yisrael and that Yisrael turned it over, bein shanich Yisrael v'afach, or the yid put it on and the guy turned it over, mutter. The eina aser, and it's not forbidden until the beginning and the end is in the hands of the guy. Amar Ravina goes a step further. Hilchasa. The law is Ravina, Hilchasa, Harifta d'shagarai v'kechavim, bread that a guy heated it up, v'afa Yisrael, and the yid baked it. Inami shagar Yisrael, the yid heated up the oven, v'afa v'kechavim. Inami, and here's the middle way. Shagarai v'kechavim, the guy heated it up, v'afa v'kechavim, and the guy baked it. But for us Yisrael, the chatabachituyeh, but the yid came and turned around the coals in order that it should bake better. Shaper dame, it's not a problem of bishul akum, dog maliach. What about a fish that the guy salted? Ooh, that's interesting, because the salting finishes the fish. Is that considered like Bishul Akim. Chizkiya Shari, Chizkiya permits it, but Rabbi Yochanan Aser. Rabbi Yochanan prohibits it. Now, what about a Beyetz Luya? What about a roasted egg while the egg is in the shell? Now, here, the guy doesn't come in contact with the food at all. Bar Kapara Shari, Bar Kapara permits it, but Rabbi Yochanan Aser, he says, look, it's done by the Akim, it's not fit to be eaten raw, and therefore it's forbidden. Kiyasa Rabdimi Amar, when Rav Dimi arrived, he said the following version: Echad dogma liach, whether it's the fish that the guy salted, ve'echad be'etz luya, or an egg that the guy roasted. Chizkiya bar kapara sharu, Chizkiya bar kapara permitted. Rabbi Yochanan aser. Rav Chia Parva, ikla lebei Reish Galusa. He visited the house of Reish Galusa. Amrulei, they said to him, be'etz luya mai. What's the din if a guy roasts an egg? Amalahu, so he said, look, it's 2 against 1. Chizkiya bar kapara sharu, Chizkiya bar kapara permitted it. Rabbi Yochanan aser, ve'ein dvar shalachad b'makom shnayim, and therefore it's permitted. Amalu Rav Zvid said, like to tzisu, like, don't listen to him. Hachi amar Abaya, so said Abaya. Hilchas hakavasi to Rabbi Yochanan, that the be'etz luya is aser. The unscrupulous attendants of the Reish Lakish were upset with him. Ashkiyu nagota dechala. They gave him a potion of vinegar that had poison in it, and he passed away. Tan Rabbanan. And again, it's wonderful to have everybody joining us here in the beginning of the week as we start off our week with the beautiful way of learning 2 block Gemara and 2 long block Gemara, I might say. Tan Rabbanan have kafrisen, caper berries. Kafrisen is that miracle bush, that everything is edible on the bush, the husks, the berries. So kafrisen, v'kaflutais. Kaflutas are leeks. V'hemtalia, we're going to see that hemtalia is a very special concoction. V'chamin, and hot water, v'kloyos, and toasted wheat, shalahen, mutarin. All of these items of a guy, if a guy does them, they're mutter. Beyes sluya asura, a roasted egg is aser. Shemen, so we know that the Bezdin Rabbi Yehuda Nasi permitted it. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, a Bezdin nimnu alav tirua. Now, what is hemtalia? What is that? Who ever heard of hemtalia? What's hemtalia? Says the Gemara, Tanya, he hemtalia, he fislaya, he shiata. Okay, thanks a lot. What is that? My shiata, what shiata? Amar Rabba Babachana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ha arba inshnin de nofik hay uvda mimitzrayim. It's 40 years since this incident came out of Egypt. V'Rabba Babachana didei Amar ha shiten shnin de nofik hay uvda mimitzrayim. That this incident came from Mitzrayim. It's not. They're not arguing. Just Rabbi Babachana reminisced about it 20 years later. Each one is saying it. One said it 40 years after it happened, and one said it 20 years later, 60 years after it happened. What did they do? Maisi bizra de karpasa. They brought seeds of celery, or bizra de kisna, and seeds of flax, or bizna de shavlalisa, and seeds of fenugreek. V'torulu ba'de adadi. They soaked them together. B'pshure, in lukewarm water. V'shavkalei ad mekabel. They left it in the water until they took root. Umaytzvei chatzvei charete. They brought new pitchers. Umalulu maya, filled them up with water. V'torubu gargishta, and put them in earth. They took earth, umedapkin bay, and stuck this concoction on the earth. And they went into the bathhouse. Adinofki, by the time they came out from bathing, malavlave, these seeds sprouted. V'achla minayu, and they ate these sprouts. V'kaire, and it cooled them off. Mebinisa dereishayu, from the hair on their head, Ad tufra de karayu, until the toes on their feet. In other words, it cooled off their whole body. Should know that Rabbi Dr. Tendler, who was Rav Moshe's son-in-law, he married Rav Moshe's daughter, Rebbetzin Shifra. So he was a big researcher, and he did a lot of research on things that fought cancer. And he would have mice with cancer. And he told me once that the most potent food that he found in his tests that fought off cancer was broccoli sprouts. He said broccoli sprouts fought off all kinds of cancer. I remember that I used to buy kernels, broccoli kernels, and put them on moist paper towels, and they would produce sprouts. They were like alfalfa sprouts, but these were broccoli sprouts. And I would give it to my Rebbetzin, Aleh Shalom. Amar Rav Ashi, Amali Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina said, Milan. He said, these are mere words. It's impossible that by the time they came out of the bathhouse, it should have already sprouted. V'imrei, and there's another version, b'milan, that this could only happen with the help of incantations. Tan Rabbanan. HaKuspan shel oivdei kerchav. Kuspan is a type of residue of dates. They used to make date beer, and they would take the residue of the date, and they would boil it, and they would make a type of jam, a type of mark, M-A-R-C, a type of mark from it. Shehucha muchamim, that was heated up with hot water. B'yoyre gedoyla aser, if it was in a big vat, it was aser. But b'yoyre ketana mutter, if the water was boiled up in a small vat, it's mutter. Now, now the reason, let me explain to you, why should there be a difference if it's a big vat or a small vat? The difference is as follows. In a big vat, they could have cooked up forbidden food, and therefore the date mark, the date jam, would absorb the forbidden belia. A small pot, they didn't cook anything else in. And the Gemara says, what's considered a small pot? Ve'ezu hi yore ketana. What a swallow cannot fit inside it. It says, maybe they cut it up into pieces and put it in the pot. The head of a swallow cannot fit into it. Says, but I don't understand. We learned in another brayso that even with water boiled up in a big pot is also permitted. Even in a big pot it's mutter. Says, well, yeah, because that opinion holds that even if there was forbidden belia, it's nice in tam l'fgam, and therefore it's permitted. Like kasha, command yam nice in tam l'fgam is also. So then a big pot where they would have other things cooked in it, it's also. Command yam nice in tam l'fgam mutter. Amrav Sheishes. We're moving along here on this Matzah Shabbos. Amrav Sheishes. Hai mishcha shlika da'armoi. Boiled oil of a guy. Also. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. What are you worried about? Amrav Safal Amay Necheshla. Imisham I if you're afraid that they mixed wine in it and it became yayin nesach, Mr. Sorry, they wouldn't mix wine in it because it would become sour. Imisham bishulei oivik kechavim, it's not a problem because nechalu k'mayshul chai. And imisham giulei oivik kechavim, if you're worried that it will absorb something from the pot of the guy, nice and tam nafkama or mutter, and therefore there's nothing to be concerned about. Bo minei Ravasi, hani ahine shlike da'amoi Mai. What's the din with the cooked dates of a guy? Says the Gemara, Chulye loy tibayalach. If it's sweet dates are eaten even if it's raw, so devade shari. Merire, if it's bitter and it only becomes permitted through the cooking, like tibayalach devade asire. Kib tibayalach mitziyei mai. If it's in the middle, it's not sweet, it's not bitter. What's the din? Amalu mai tibayalach. What's the shaila? The Rebbe Aser, our Rebbe asked it. Omanu, and who is that? Levi. So the middle dates, he held that since they're not sweet enough to be eaten raw, it's forbidden. Now, the next concoction that the Gemara is going to talk about is shisah. Now, shisah is made that they took kernels, they toasted it in the oven, and they made from the flour this dish. Now the problem is if it was from lentil flour, since the lentil flour was very sweet, they would add vinegar to it. And vinegar is, of course, a problem because it is a derivative of wine. Sometimes they do it with water. The water wouldn't be a problem. The question is are we geyser where they did it with water or to where they would do it with vinegar? So let's see how the Gemara unravels this situation. Shisisa, this dish made from the flour of the toasted kernels, Rav Shari, Rav permits it, Avoda Shmuel v'Levi Asrei, of the father of Shmuel, and Levi prohibited. Bechite v'sarei, wheat and barley, which is sweet enough and doesn't need the vinegar added. Kuli amalei pligi d'shari. Everybody agrees it's permitted. Betlofchei dechala, if we know they added vinegar to the lentil variety, that of course since lentil is from wine, that's a problem of yayin esa. Kuli amalei pligi d'asa. Keep pligid betlofchei demaya. The argument is with a lentil flour which they mix with water. Margazvinan Marsavish, the father of Shmuel, and Levi hold that with gazrinan ha'atuha, we decree the one that's made with water to the one that's made with wine. And one holds that we don't make a decree. Now that's the first version. The Ikadamre is another version. Betlofke demaya, with the lentils mixed with water, because we're just too worried that it'll be switched with the ones that are mixed with vinegar. Ki pligi bechite v'sare, ma'asav gazrin and ha'ataha, we decree wheat and barley to the lentils, or ma'asav loy gazrin. Amarav, now once we mentioned this subject of shisisa, trei mine shisisa, Shadar Barzile Hagila Dila David. When David was on the run from Avshalom, who was trying to kill him, when David was on the run, so Barzile Hagiladi sent a care package to David HaMelech. The Chsiv, he sent him mishkav bedding, visapais and bowls, uklei yaitzer and pots, v'chitim v'sayrim, wheat and barley, v'kemach v'kali, and flour and the toasted grain, upoil and beans, v'adoshim, lentils v'kali. So here you have shisisa of wheat and barley, and shisisa of lentils. Says the Gemara, v'hashtahu d'kamapke tzane tzane, l'shuke denarda, and now that we find that they bring out, the Goyim bring out baskets of shisa to Narda, v'les dechayish la davu v'shmo v'levi. Now they learned that this is talking about that they bought wheat and barley. So at least according to the second version, nobody is geyser wheat and barley or to lentils. Okay, we're going to stop over here, Rabbi Say, a big job. And now we're going to learn the Mishnah Yomis. By the way, I did hang up on Thursday by accident after I did for the Shabbos table before doing the Mishnah Yomis, but I did do the Mishnah Yomis afterwards. And it is, of course, on TorahAnytime.com and on YouTube and on Kol Halashon.